What is going on, everybody? Hope you're all having a great Thursday. We got a nice morning slate today. So the morning slates, the way we'll do it generally is we'll do the live shows for the mornings as the main slate. Try to get shows out, but certainly get content out for the smaller ones. Today was it's a little trickier on the really early days with the content relation, but I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing on this show. So if you guys tune in for the live, you're going to get everything we've got. There was a Cloudflare issue with SaberSim this morning. Everything should be all good now. So we're just making sure that everybody's able to access theirs, and they just had an issue. It's a general internet issue. A lot of sites are down right now, so they had some trouble, but it seems to be working fine now, at least for me. So anyway, there's that. Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do on this slate. Good morning to Joanne as well. We're going to talk about, it's a weird slate because it's going to be hard for the chalk not to be concentrated. Like if you go through each of these games, every game, I'll talk to you about the games where it's not good hitting weather. Not so bad in Cincinnati, but not great. It's 56 degrees with the wind blowing in a little from left field. I still think that there's some plays in this game that I definitely want exposure to. Grisham, Pham, Naquin, Votto. They're just all so crazy cheap that I think taking a shot there could be beneficial. I don't even mind Matt Beatty down in the 6 hole. Another game, cold weather in Milwaukee, in Pittsburgh. I could see an argument be made for some Milwaukee bats here, but mostly it's going to be Freddie Peralta for me. That's the only story really in that game for me. You've got the wind blowing in hard from left field, almost 20 miles an hour between Colorado and Philly. So that's going to make that game less appealing for hitting. Again, Zach Wheeler becomes a better play because of it. I know he's lost a little velocity. I expect him to pitch himself back into shape. He'll get his K numbers up again in no time. Today's probably the day he starts. Then you've got wind blowing in from 16 miles an hour in left field in Washington and Miami, which again makes me just not want to play the hitters in that game, even though I would normally want to pick on Patrick Corbin and take shots against Rogers. I actually like Rogers as a contrarian tournament arm to throw out there. He's got some upside. Sheets just joined us. So Sheets,
what's going on?
How's it going, man? I was just running through all the games and talking about basically how there's pretty horrible hitting weather in almost every stadium, except for the teams for good reason that are chalky, which is New York because the wind's blowing out 20 miles an hour, and to right center. Every other game has pretty significant winds in and cold temperatures. The Yankees are, coldish at 54, but actually one of the warmer places on the slate. What I was going to say is it's with the White Sox blowing in 12 miles an hour at 46 degrees from center field. It's just nothing looks, you only have the Houston, Tampa, and Yankee game and Houston and Tampa are just normal hitting weather games. New York just has the wind blowing out. Everybody else is in a terrible spot for hitting. And as we've seen so far, the hitting that's been the nuts. And I keep saying it to everybody who wanted to stack Miami yesterday, everybody who wanted it. So far, it's been like 100% right. And it's not always going to be, but it has been legitimately. You can't play these other spots because there's just no power upside whatsoever. Also want to point out that more and more over and over again, the 5-man stacks are not winning. The four whatevers are winning most of the big tournaments, the big buy-in tournaments anyway. I know that some of those have smaller fields, but it is also because, as we've seen, no team is really going off. It's really hard to go off when you have short rotations in the bullpen, cold weather, and not good hitting weather, and wind blowing in and things like that. So I do want to get people to at least think a little bit abstractly about this just random, because I really think it's the lazy man's way of doing things. That if you're playing, if your max entering is the right way to go. I don't think this is just generally, 5-man stacks make more sense than 4-man stacks at these times of the season, especially with shortened slates. 15-game slates, sure. 13-game slates, sure. When we get to 9 or less, actually, really, it's more like 7 or less usually. But when you have 7 or less, and then almost none of them are playable, then you have to consider, why am I trying to stack 5 men from a team where the home runs are being suppressed by 50%? Things like that. Anyway, just wanted to sort of speak about that generally. I finished 5th in the Monster last night. I had another run in the 250 on FanDuel, but I didn't end up having a great night. It wasn't a bad night, but I thought I was going to win the Monster for a little bit. Didn't quite get there. My Indians came. Well, my one Indian really came through for me, but getting Jose Ramirez at 1% was pretty crazy. Anyway, Sheets, go ahead, talk about what you're going to do on this slate, and then we'll get some questions and go back and forth with chat.
Yeah. So last night was the same for me. I did okay in that 250 also. You did a little better than me. We were both standing up when Jose Ramirez hit that second home run. I'm sure kind of near the end. That put me into the not having a bad night realm. So glad to see that you made a run in the monster. That was great. I didn't notice. I didn't play FanDuel, so I wasn't really tracking that. But I did see your lineup in the 250. We were both rooting for the same dudes pretty much.
Yeah.
So that was glad that worked out. With respect to today, I came in like kind of mid-sentence, and I guess we starting with the pitching. I think you hit on the two, most logical pitchers near the end of your intro there, that being Peralta and Wheeler. They're both very, very cheap, and they both can strike people out. Now I caught what you had said about Wheeler maybe just kind of, maybe a step behind some of the other aces as far as getting his act together for the season. But that's okay. That was the deal with Bieber, right? He was like maybe a step behind, and he put up a nice number, right? Not to compare Wheeler to Bieber necessarily, but conceptually, it's
similar. Yeah.
So those are my two. Those are my two pitchers, as probably the rest of the United States of America. I would imagine. Yeah. And before you get into, I don't know if you talked about this, but for those of you that are interested, SaberSim, the site was down or is down.
We talked about all this.
You did. Okay. I'm just wondering if you were. I don't know. I didn't know when you came on there. Okay, good. So they'll fix that one. The team that I don't know what they did to the DraftKings people, to whatever to deserve this, but like the Reds are like a little league team apparently. Like everybody's 2K. I almost can't even, if you play the Reds, for example, you almost can't even use your salary, But the good news is that you can, because you have these Yankees that are just in smash spots, that you could play Stanton and Judge with no sweat. You know what I mean? Right. For example, if that's what you want to do. You know what the Yankees did? They I didn't even know they got this guy, but they took my freaking MVP and they're hanging him out there for me at like 2,100 today. That'll be Marvin.
He's in my first build.
Oh, is he? Nice.
Yeah, look, if I want to play the Yankees, I have to get different, right? So
right.
First base and third base eligible can't be more than like 5% owned, because you have Rizzo and LeMahieu and what's his name, and Donaldson. So I'm in on it. I like it.
What about so my teams that I was considering, this is the hand-built stuff, are the Yankees. What a surprise. Houston. And then the next one I have is Philly. And like I said, Cincinnati's just like uber cheap. So I don't know what to do with that. And I'm glad that you're chiming in on the Miami. Okay, because that's exactly what I wanted to hear from you. That it's like a win game that you just don't want to mess with, because this is a team that's going to kind of show up in some builds just because of price and stuff. And I have no problem avoiding it. For example,
they're going to be really popular too.
Yeah, I see that. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So I have no problem. That's some good info. I want to stress. So for me, it's Houston, the Yankees, and it's funny. As I just walked in, you were talking about maybe some Milwaukee, maybe. Mm-hmm. The one team that I'm looking at low, looks like low ownership, that maybe you haven't talked about yet. You have any interest in Tampa?
That's what I said. Yeah, I said the only games you can get away with weather-wise are in Texas.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. So just at the end there. Okay.
It sort of by default makes all of those stacks much more appealing, especially because other people aren't paying attention to the weather. And again, you look at a run total and people think that's how you decide, but it's how are you going to get those runs? We've seen 15-run games from the Cubs where nobody had more than 9 fantasy points. It actually happened. I still can't even believe it happened, but it did happen. Now, some of it was platooning some players and stuff, but they scored 15 runs in a game and had no player with more than 9 fantasy points, which is incredible. That's the kind of thing you have winds blowing in when they're 15 to 20 plus and cold weather from left field. It just feels like, what are we doing trying to play righties? Like, you're just begging for an opposite field homer. And even then, it's not like that doesn't get affected too. It just feels wrong. You know what I mean? And almost every place has a horrible weather condition. So I'm just going to be in support of anywhere that isn't too drastic. And you have, 5 miles an hour blowing in Cincinnati. But to me, that's the natural place to go, is the combination of the Cincinnati and San Diego lineups, because I like Grisham at 3.3. Machado would be a spend up that he'll get a little ownership. I don't think it's going to be crazy. Then you've got, on the Cincinnati side, Fraley, Naquin, Pham, Votto, Farmer. You could build a 5-man stack without having to do anything. I mean, not to mention Moustakas. Now these guys have all been terrible, so it's not really it's not like there's no reason for it. But we all know that Naquin has power, Pham has power, Votto has power. I think that getting a little mini stack of that game combining with your Yankees or your Houstons are my favorite way to go. I do think that Tampa Bay is very viable, and I'm actually a little bit surprised that no one's on them. So that might be the other thing I would consider doing. But for me, it was the chalky ones are Houston and New York, but then going to San Diego, Cincinnati, and then Tampa Bay would be my other team. I don't mind, by the way, like a mini stack of Seattle. I don't like stacking against the bullpen, much less one of the two best bullpens in baseball in Tampa Bay. But again, better hitting weather. You don't have any ace pitcher you're going to have to face until the 6th or 7th. And you've got a bunch of Seattle guys who are a little bit underrated, I think, as an overall offense. Just the problem is, sorry, go ahead, Chiefs.
No, go ahead.
But people will look at the lefty because you've got 3 of the top 5 hitters for Seattle are lefties, and the 3 of the top 5 in their lineup. But in reality, Springs is only going to pitch probably 1 inning or so. So you only get 1 at bat against that guy. It doesn't necessarily mean that they won't bring another lefty in later, but don't be worried about the lefty thing because you're probably just getting 1 at bat. So I like both sides of the Seattle Tampa would be my 4th option.
So forgive me again for walking in late, but did you talk about like the other pitchers like Verlander, Kopech, Talion? I mean, these are the guys that are kind of like standing out for me. Do you agree? Do you think Peralta and Wheeler are the 2 best plays, or they're going to be really popular and you're looking to pivot off of them? Like, where did you come out on this?
Well, Verlander is clearly the best play. I don't think you need to worry about salary, so I don't think it's really that close with Verlander. The only issue is he has the extreme hitters umpire. Like everybody else has a decent spot pretty much, except for him in the San Diego game, the San Diego Cincinnati game, which again, I can still feel that game getting a little wild. So I really want to get exposure to it. But Verlander has Mark Carlson, who's a big time hitters umpire. I think Verlander is the best option. And I think that, like I said, even, he has a bad outing like he did last time. He only has 4 strikeouts in 6 innings against a really tough, obviously a tough Toronto team, or 5 strikeouts in 6 innings. He gave up 2 home runs. He still only gave up 3 runs in 6 innings. The guy is basically like he's like a lock for a quality start every time he goes on the mound. His upside is higher than anybody else's on the slate. His median is higher than everybody else's on the slate. Everything about him makes most sense. It's weird to see Wheeler with the projection when Wheeler so far this season has pitched into the 5th inning, has pitched 5 innings 1 time, and he had 9 fantasy points in that outing. He's not striking people out. He's giving up tons of hard contact. It's only 3 starts, but it seems kind of still stupid to make him which he's going to be. He's going to be the most popular. I love him in general. This would be a spot where I would be saying, hey, we should be playing Wheeler. If he's 10-1 and Verlander's 10-1, I would be talking Wheeler up because Wheeler would be like 5% owned. There's no reason we need to worry much about price because of all this extra value, the way I'm looking at it. So I don't see those guys as being better. And Freddie Peralta was absolutely one of the worst pitchers in baseball. His first 2 outings, he looked like he couldn't get anybody out. And then he had a good outing against Philadelphia, which a good outing just means 5 innings with 6 strikeouts. And he got lucky no run score. They had the bases loaded, no outs at one time, I think. It was 2nd and 3rd, nobody out. And he put up 18 fantasy points, and he's projecting for more than that. Again, I'm just saying, yes, it's a good matchup. Yes, these are good spots, but these pitchers haven't shown us any reason to play them, and to make them the most popular feels wrong. So I will be mixing those guys in, but I will start with Verlander, and I don't mind using Tyon either. At least Tyon has, looked okay in 2 of his 3 starts, even against Baltimore the last time, which again, I just think there's going to be sometimes bad outings. Tyon, has, what is this K prop today? I believe it's 6. So he's got a 6K prop. Verlander and Peralta both have 6.5, and Kopech has 6.5. Now Kopech, again, I would like him better as a pivot, but I think he's actually pretty safe with a decent upside. So those are the 5 decisions really. I have no problem if somebody wants to play Bailey Ober because of ownership. You could make an argument for Ober over Tyon. I don't mind that argument. I think you can play Trevor Rogers at 6,100 as a get weird play. I don't think he's actually. This is a better play than I think it's given credit for. But again, I just don't think you need the money as much. So I'm going to focus on those 5 top guys.
And just to kind of finish it off, only because these are guys that can put up games sometimes, is Tyler Mahle at 7,600 and Tariq Skubal. Any interest in either of those two guys?
I mean, Skubal at 8,500, we have to start thinking about what are we going? We like him better than Wheeler. We like him better than Peralta, maybe. But then you're getting into like a different tier. It's not like Skubal's in a different price will allow you to differentiate your lineups in any way. He's right the same, right above those guys. So that's my issue.
And Mr. GPP, we didn't talk about Patrick Corbin at all.
Yeah, I don't think that's a real conversation.
Okay.
I think you're thinking of like a year and a half ago. I really do. Corbin was statistically the worst pitcher in baseball last year. I think he had 3 good starts though.
I remember his first start of the season last year.
I definitely was trying to get after him early on in the season. That's true.
Yeah, I think the first start of the season, he gave up 12 runs in the first 2 innings, I think.
Yeah, and then he did something crazy, like struck out 7 of the first 8 guys the next time.
Oh, really?
It was like he had only a few good starts, but it was like sandwiched in between these like 10-run explosions. But Skubal's got the talent. I definitely need and it's a great pitching situation. I mean, there's no power in that. I mean, it's going to be really hard to hit the ball out in Minnesota today. So I agree with the guys you said. I still can't get over this Nick Martinez getting all this respect, and I'm not exactly sure where it's coming from, or maybe I should have more respect for him. I don't think I should. Guy's given up 5 home runs in the last 2 starts. Granted, Atlanta, the Dodgers, so it's tough matchups. I don't really know why people like every time I see a run total against Nick Martinez, including when the Dodgers played him, I was sort of shocked by the total. Like I was like, how are they projected to score like 4.4 runs against them and they're projected to score 5 against everybody else? This doesn't really make sense to me. So, by the way, if the weather was any better, I would be trying to talk everybody into the White Sox. You have a team that strikes out against a contact pitcher. I would be all over the Gavin Sheets and Anderson and Grandal. And I actually think Grandal still as a one-off is a great play. He's just too cheap. Pollock, I would be talking about all these guys, but I just can't get behind, especially the righties when the winds are blowing in from left. So that's my issue there. But I guess summing up, I'm heavy. Like I'll be on the Yankees in Houston mostly as either 4 or 3-man stacks, and I'll be combining it with Tampa, San Diego, Cincinnati. On both sides, especially the Cincy side, and I will mix in Tampa Bay, Seattle as I see fit. I think that I'm looking maybe with the Yankees. If I do my 5-man stacks, I think I will go back to what I said yesterday. Include some of these low-owned guys in those. I mean, it sounds so obvious, but you have to force your way in with some of these spots. So play, Higashioka in a 5-man stack, or play Marwin Gonzalez, or play Tim LaCastro. He'd be my least favorite of the 3. But play 1 or 2 of those guys if you're going to make a 5-man, because otherwise you're going to be talking about dealing with a little too much chalk. And I just think it's hard. It's going to be hard to win with the chalkiest stack if you're going to stack it up the chalkiest way, unless you're getting totally different, like I did yesterday with my Cleveland stack, where I did play all the chalk. I played Cleveland, and I don't think anybody was above 1.5% owned or something. All right, guys, pop in any questions and thoughts. Sheets. Talk through anything else that maybe we haven't covered on.
I'm looking at my board here. Now, first of all, I don't think I'm gonna play FanDuel, but I may as well go over what I would play. Like on FanDuel, I do have Wheeler as a really, really strong player over there. I presume he'll be, between him and I guess Verlander, like the most popular, just because he's like a full 1K less than Peralta over there. So he's only 8,100. So I think that he's probably the best, not best, like the best value play over there. With respect to the stacks over there, I'm just trying to see if it's different.
Yeah,
I still have the Yankees as the best, and who pops up a little? Nobody really. So it's still like Yankees, Houston, Philly. The second time I mentioned Philly, and we haven't really talked about it. Did you like Philly?
I'm not playing a team in that kind of weather.
Oh, that's one of the places with the weather. Okay.
You put a lefty out there and a wind blowing in 20 miles an hour from left field. What am I hoping for? And by the way, Gomer, as I always say,
Gomer's nuts. Are you kidding?
He's a much better pitcher than he gets credit for. His only bad start was at home. His 2 road starts this year, he's averaging 22 fantasy points.
Do we want to play him?
No.
Okay, just checking.
Not for the same price as the other guys, but I say it every time he pitches, and I feel like, he just does it when he's down in the 6K range. It's a little easier to play, and I don't think you need a savings today, but like then you need him to outduel all the other top pitchers. I might have to find a way to get Kopech in there. I do think Verlander is, he's the best pitcher, obviously, but the thing with him that's different than everybody else is there's literally he could throw 110 or 120 pitches. Nobody else can really throw more than 90, to be honest. Yeah. At some point, Wheeler will get back there.
One thing about FanDuel, which is interesting, is that is the presence of Toronto on that slate. And I just think about in general whether teams or games that are isolated, you know what I mean, only on one site, get either. I mean, you can make the argument that they get lower owned because people are not like double analyzing them. Or you could make the case of the opposite. You know what I mean? Here I could play Toronto on FanDuel. Maybe I'll play them here. I was wondering what you thought about that in general, and whether you looked, because I currently have Toronto rated like pretty poorly actually, which is very rare, right? Who's he against? Like Clemens? You know what I mean? Who's Toronto playing that they're not looking as good?
Well, let's just not forget they're not. It's not like they're scoring tons of runs, so it's not like this lineup.
But what I'm saying is they always like project near the top, and they're just not today.
They have no Vlad in the lineup today. Think about it from the Toronto last year, their best 2 hitters are not in the lineup from last year. You could argue, and then you have Springer, Bichette, Gurriel, Tapia batting cleanup. Chapman, Kirk, Espinal, Cateau, Zimmer. That is a very weak lineup. Sure, I have no problem with it, but there's nothing about the lineup that makes me excited. I think Chapman, Bichette, and Gurriel. I'm sorry, Chapman, Bichette, Gurriel, and Springer are all obviously good hitters. Well, Gurriel, you could argue that he's not a good hitter, but all the other 3 have power. I am a little surprised at the run total, though, just like you. And on FanDuel, I probably would take a crack or 2 at it. Whitlock has got like really good stuff and doesn't really ever get hit, but he doesn't really pitch very long either. So you're talking about basically a bullpen game with a really good opener that's probably going to go 4 innings. So that's what I would say. I don't see it as a great spot. I would be playing Manoah.
Right. That's the other thing. Right.
But do you want to play him over the Verlander? I don't know. He's right there with those guys for me, though. I do think he's got the upside to be better than them. And I think he's going to be significantly lower owned. But it is interesting that point when you have the games on different. I think it usually depends on what kind of game it is. I think if it was like a Rocky game, for example, I think that everybody would play it on the one site. And then it would be a good thing to fade. But I think if it was a game, just a random game with a medium total, it's probably going to just get overlooked.
It's actually kind of weird that that DraftKings didn't include it, just because it's only 1 hour after the last game that they're covering,
So Rhodey's pointing out something that I just completely am totally off of in general. I think stacking against ace pitchers who don't walk people and don't give up home runs is not a good idea.
Wait. So stacking against ace pitchers who don't give up home runs and don't walk people? Yeah. That sounds logical to me.
No, but everybody does it because they want to go this extra contrarian way. Like, Boston scores run. Yeah, because Boston, BABIP'd around in the 9th inning last night. Let's not treat it like, okay, we should be stacking. And also, it's not like they had a big night. They didn't. It's just nobody else scored runs, and again goes back to the non-stacking being making some sense. But when you see a team, just because yes, it is right to stack certain teams all the times and all those things like that, the Dodgers or whatever. Boston is not playing in Boston, so most of their production is coming at home in general. Keep that in mind. And they also play in Baltimore and New York twice a year, it's 36 times a year. So a third of their games basically. So no, sorry, 36 more than a third. 75% of their games are always going to be in better stadiums as long as they're not in New York, Baltimore, or home. Okay. So just remember that I guess not, I got the percentages wrong. Anyway, I just don't think stacking against aces is it's just not a winning way to play DFS. It's really not. Now, if you're playing 150 lineups to have 5% of those stacks, I think it is. And I think it depends on the aces. We haven't really seen enough from Manoah to ever be picked on. I don't know if he's had a blow up game or anything like that.
You know what I'd rather do. So again, we had this discussion for like a half an hour. We were talking about in our baseball preview, right? The whole concept of leverage, like how little or how much you kind of need. And if you're thinking of like of going for the throat, you know what I mean, and just taking the stacking against the best pitcher on the slate, you know what I mean, or you know what I mean, one of the top pitchers on the slate. I mean, think about whether you need really that kind of leverage.
Right, you need it.
Given how unlikely it is to actually come through for you,
Well, and most importantly, it's the pitcher, right? Like, I mean,
well, that's what I'm saying, Yeah. And it's not as if Manoah. I mean, I don't know why we're going to highlight this, but just for purpose of illustration, it's not as if Manoah's like going to be 80% owned or anything like that,
right.
For openers. And second of all, what I like doing, this seems obvious, but if you really want to play that game and like go double leverage, pick one of those freaking stupid like chalk SP2s to go after. You know what I mean? Like when you get one of those like rookies coming in at 5,200, or one of those like real cheap $7,100 pitchers that everybody's going to play. You know what I mean? Those you could get double direct leverage on and just feel a little bit better about it. I mean, just because that's at least got a chance. Like that's got at least a chance to come through. Where it's just so unlikely that the best pitchers are going to get freaking lit up. It just doesn't happen all that often.
I'm going to take a different stance. I think it really depends on the type of pitcher. Like, I mean, I was very high on the Indians yesterday, and they almost opened the game up and just took it away right away last night against Ohtani. But there's high variance guys at the top anyone who has control issues, things like that, then I can get behind it. You know what I mean? But it's really hard for me to get behind just doing it for the sake of doing it. There's nothing, you know what I mean? Like, and that's what a lot of guys, again, I always talk about this guy, Eric Johnson, because that's what he does every day. He just goes and he's like, and even if he's right once a year, you have to get the right part of it. You have to stack that team a bunch of different ways against those best pitchers. And it's like, you don't do that against guys like Scherzer, and you don't do that against guys who just don't have the walk rate and don't, they might even give hard contact, but they can't get enough hits off of them to win. So I'm just not a fan of it unless it's guys like Ohtani, Robbie Ray, guys who really can get wild and then in turn get lit up because of it.
And it also helps. I think you would agree that it's not just you want to stack against that type of pitcher. Well, that's perfectly acceptable, but it'd also be a nice bonus if that team also had kind of a fishy bullpen. Yeah. So if that guy got wild, even if you didn't completely get to him, maybe you worked him enough where he's only going to be in for 4 innings. Right. And then you're attacking a weak bullpen.
Yep, I totally agree with that too. All right, guys. Any other questions before we get out of here? I've got to finish and edit down my lineups and whittle sheets. Any other thoughts and stuff before? I'm happy to stick around for a little bit, but there's no reason to. I don't have anything else to say unless we have some questions. I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still kind of fiddling around with this. Let me. Are there any questions in there? He's just asking for Rhodey's favorite stat. Yeah, I don't. Oh, I gotta mute this a second.
Okay, mute it yet. All right. Anyway, guys, pop in anything else. And by the way, it doesn't mean that one's right or wrong. I just am saying my takes, and I say them in a very strong way every time I think them. And I just want to try and make everybody, have their best chance and live their best life for these things. Let's see. Rhodey likes Houston. I like Houston too. I actually don't like their lineup, but that's one of those things with Houston is like sometimes I feel like we're playing the name brand of Houston sheets more than we are playing the actual players who are playing. And yeah, it looks great when Chas McCormick hits a home run last night, but this is not George Springer, Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, and not even Kyle Tucker today. So you've got, and then you've got Michael Brantley in the lefty, which he's fine, but he doesn't.
Tucker didn't make it in today.
No. It's just one of those things. I have no idea why they're not batting this kid Pena higher in the order. Like, I actually think he's going to be the better one, the best of this group. Actually, I think he's the best other hitter, and he might be better than some of those guys. But yeah, it's kind of an ugly lineup if you look at it. Like Bregman stands out, McCormick because of his price stands out. But I would say that if you're going to make a Houston stack, you want to do something a little different. Play both McCormick and Siri, or play Siri instead of McCormick. You know what I mean? Something like that will differentiate you. And I think Alvarez and Brantley will be low owned against the lefties for what it's worth. You can actually get different with the Houston stack pretty easily. Maybe that is the easiest one to go after. The one thing we always say, though, you know what never wins, Sheets? Ever. Do you remember? No, nobody ever wins a tournament stacking against
Chris Middleton.
No one ever wins a tournament without stacking Martin Perez, with stacking against him. Remember, everybody tries to do it every time, and every time it's the same thing: 5 or 6 innings, 1 run, 2 hits, 2 singles, or something.
Right.
And that's it.
Well, speaking of that, what about I brought up this team earlier. So we mentioned I mentioned Patrick Corbin. Or do you want to go against him? You want to talk?
No, I told you no way I'm playing Miami going into that.
Oh, that was the weather. Okay,
they're all the weather. That one just happens to be 20 miles and in from left field. That's at 50 degrees. It's going to be hard. It's going to take a lot to get one out to left field today. So basically, you're talking about any.
Remember, sneaky good GM. Maybe they have tricks on how to get the ball into the gaps a little bit better. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know about that one. Now we're really reaching
sneaky GM.
But I mean, that whole game, I'm just sort of like, I just don't like playing hitters in that stuff, and I'll just play them where the weather's not as bad. I'm just gonna live or die by this, and that's what it is. All right. I think the Rays are probably the best get off the board. Maybe you don't need to use it in the 777 in my 777 because but I mean, you could absolutely, but they're not going to be owned. And I think you could play Franco. I would go Franco, Margot, Lau, Harold Ramirez.
Is Rosarena injured?
Yeah, he's out. I always say you can play Yandy. Just beware that you're not getting any power from that guy. You'll get it. Yeah, he'll hit.
Oh, I just got really good news. I didn't realize that Nico Goodrum was out. It just saved me money not playing him.
But you know what? He used to be your guy when you used to stack Detroit. I feel like you used to win money with Nico Goodrum.
I did.
But yeah, these bigger buy-ins, as Rody just pointed out, I just want to point out the bigger buy, or more just the smaller field stuff. You can get a lot more creative with how you do a lot more different with how you do your stacking, and you don't need to fully commit all in on one spot just because everybody else is doing that. When, the 4-man stack won the 777 last night, you know what I mean? It's every night you're starting to see this stuff because people are starting to learn the same things that I keep screaming about, which is that there's so many less reasons to stack, especially early in the season, with the cold weather and the pitchers not being extended, which actually you'd think would be good for hitters. It's actually the exact opposite. In general, you're not going to get that game where they need the 6 innings out of a guy, so they're going to let him pitch, or they need the 100 pitches out of the guy because they don't want to ruin their bullpen. This just doesn't happen early in the season. They just want to take it easy on the starters, let the bullpen handle the rest of the games, and most starters, even when they're going. I mean, I had to worry yesterday about Ryan, who was my number 1 pitcher by far. By the end of the day, I was like, are they going to pull him after 5 innings, even with 70 pitches or whatever? Thank goodness they didn't, because he just dominated after that.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to have to go build my lineups pretty soon. Sheets, do you have anything else?
Well, no, I just want to let you guys know I'm not going to be around to eat this evening for the live thing, but I will put up
the much of the live thing. There's only 2 games.
Well, the 3-game NBA slate.
That's what I'm going to be doing. Yeah, so I will be doing the live thing. Go ahead.
So I'll put up projections before I leave. But you'll see an MMA video over the next day or so, and the normal DGen weekend for me. You'll follow along with that, obviously. Oh, and here's a little sneaky announcement. I don't know if you noticed this, but I don't know if you guys knew this, but we have a very famous kind of horse race handicapper like in our Discord. Michael Baychok. He's been writing for the Times-Picayune from New Orleans for like a long time, and he's a big fan of the channel, and we yap about stuff in the Discord from time to time. And he puts his horse racing stuff in, and he reached out to me in the Discord yesterday, say, hey, you want to do a Kentucky Derby video with me for next week? And I think we're going to do that. We'll kind of like beef up the Kentucky Derby talk.
Oh, awesome.
As we get in there. So I think he and I are going to do something maybe next Wednesday or Thursday when the entries, when the morning lines come out. So that's something to look forward to. For those of you that don't like do horse racing generally, I mean, most people follow the Derby at least. And
Yeah.
I knew I was going to put something on anyway, and it'd be kind of cool to do it with another horse racing guy. So be on the lookout for that.
I love it. That sounds great. I'm actually looking forward to it. I need to get some picks this year. I want to hit a big parlay on the Derby.
Yeah.
All right. Well, great, man. All right. We'll take it easy, Sheets. Have a good day. And everybody else, I will see you at live for basketball at 6 Eastern. We will go over that, and I'll talk over whatever MLB is left. I think it's just a 2-game slate, but that's pretty much it for the day. So good luck to everybody. I'll be in Discord throughout the day, and let's make some money. Good luck.